All right. Hello, Alec. As we talk, the final ballots were counted yesterday. It's now Tuesday. We got a couple of very close races. So what does it mean for Kelowna Centre and Surrey Guildford?
Those two ridings are, I know it sounds a bit complicated, but there's this 1/500th mark that Elections BC uses to, I guess, account for if a judicial recount is needed. Both of those ridings fall within that mark. In Surrey Guildford, the NDP are only up by 27 votes. In Kelowna Centre, the Conservatives are only up by 38 votes. In both ridings, that's under that threshold, and that will need to go to a judicial recount, which will happen at some point after November 4th. The deadline to apply, and I use that term loosely because they don't need to apply, it's mandatory. Um, Both those ridings will be recounted after that deadline. When exactly, we're not quite sure, but the judge, because it is a judicial recount, can decide to recount all the ballots or just recount some of them if they see a specific, you know, not all the ballots need to be counted if that's their ruling. Those are the two ridings we're still waiting on. Other than that, all votes are in, all votes are counted, all ridings have been decided. NDP leader David Eby has been asked by Lieutenant Governor Janet Austin to carry on as premier. I know we all said, and the NDP's news release actually said, form the next government. That's not actually correct, because Eby is
Oh,
already premier. He will just continue on as premier instead of forming a new government. Now, he will have to create a new cabinet. He will have to appoint a speaker, and that's sort of where we're at this point, is waiting for those shoes to drop.
okay. And we should point out that those two ridings that are still judicially up in the air, the NDP holds Surrey Guildford, and the Conservatives hold that slight lead in Kelowna Centre. So, best case scenario for either party is they could pick up one seat, or they could remain the same.
Yes, and so that creates some challenges possibly for the NDP, because Surrey Guildford is the reason why they're able to have a bare majority at this point. If that riding flips again, it's already flipped once. It was Conservative on election night, and then in the recounting, yes, it's not recounting, but final count yesterday, it flipped to the NDP based on mail-in ballots, absentee ballots, all those sorts of things, and it could still flip back to the Conservatives. And now that would leave the NDP again at 46 seats and needing the support of the Greens, to either on a vote by vote basis or on a confidence and supply agreement to survive any confidence vote. If the results stay the same, the NDP can form the barest of majorities, meaning they can survive any confidence vote. The Speaker, in matters of confidence, can break the tie. Um, Legislation is more fuzzy, though, because the convention is that the Speaker should not go against the status quo. Now, exactly what that means isn't clear. There are no hard and fast rules. It is expected by some that the Speaker will still vote with the NDP the majority of the time, but that's not necessarily the case. And some people disagree with that notion and saying, if it's up to the speaker to pass legislation, then they should abstain or vote against because it goes against the status quo. So that's something that we will have to figure out, assuming the NDP appoint one of their own MLAs as the speaker. It's widely expected that Raj Chauhan will be speaker again, but I also know the NDP have been holding discussions with the Conservatives and the Greens about whether one of them wants to be speaker. Now, for the Conservatives, that would likely mean crossing the aisle or sitting as an independent in a
Right.
similar manner to Daryl Plackus in 2017. Now, that seems like a strike of lightning, so I'm not sure if that's going to happen again, and I imagine the NDP will need to rely on one of their own MLAs to serve as speaker, which creates a whole bunch of procedural challenges that I'm sure the general public, that's the last thing that's on your mind. But in terms of actually keeping the government functioning, that's going to be the main question moving forwards.
Hmm. Well, and it may not be on our minds, and it sounds bureaucratic, but really, where the rubber hits the road, there's we need governments to take action, to fix things, to help help the economy run smoothly, etc. And if they're not functioning, it does have an effect, obviously, on the average person and potentially on our credit rating if the credit rating agencies see us as unstable in some way.
For sure. And in terms of getting the government back up and running, David Eby was on the radio this morning. He said that he was planning a fall session, and that he's meeting with the Greens today for discussions, and that he's willing to work with Greens, Conservatives on policies that, in his words, matter for people. And so he's really kind of trying to, I guess, create that sense that he's willing to work across the aisles. Whether that remains the case is going to be something to be seen. But we can likely, assuming there's no issues with the recount and there's no issues with negotiations or appointing a speaker or anything, we can expect a fall session. Exactly when, we do not know, but sometime within the next month or so, I expect a fall session to kick off.
Oh, interesting. So they would, I guess, have to wait till after he'll have to wait till after the judicial recount. Is that?
I imagine so.
Okay.
I can't imagine they can go back into the legislature until that's all settled.
Right.
But again, that's something where I don't have all the answers. Maybe they can.
Okay.
But
They would have to swear everybody in anyways at any event, wouldn't they?
exactly, and
Yeah.
that creates a whole host of problems if then the recount happens and it switches. And so yeah, it's complicated at this point, but expect a fall session at some point here.
You mentioned now the NDP could potentially drop to 46 if Surrey Guildford flips. It's probably not likely given 27 votes and what we've seen with recounts before. It's also probably not likely that Kelowna Centre flips with 38 votes. But if that flipped to the NDP, of course, they'd be at 48 seats, and then they'd be really happy, obviously, because then
They'd
they
be
could
really
elect
happy.
a
They'd be
speaker
able
and they'd
to
still have a
have a
majority.
majority government, not
Right.
need the support of the Greens in any way, shape, or form, assuming all their MLAs are in the House.
Right.
Which whole host of issues, family reasons, car
Sure.
accidents. There's a whole host of reasons why MLAs can't be in the legislature, but I imagine there's going to be a much shorter leash this time for that.
Right. And they'll be hoping for not for a mild flu season, for example, to keep everybody there if they're going back in the fall.
Yes.
All right. Well, I know you're going to hear, like I say, we're talking on Tuesday morning, and by the time some people watch this, you've probably already been to a news conference that Premier David Eby is holding today, and Conservative leader John Rustad is holding another one this afternoon. I expect you'll be at both of those and writing about that. And when we talk next week, we can see if we're any closer to having it all nailed down and getting back to the business of the people in the legislature.
Goodness, I hope so, Harold. I'm ready for this election to be over.
I think we all are. Thank you.
Thank you.